Now here's something nobody tells you about learning Japanese. The reason you keep quitting probably has nothing to do with how smart or how disciplined you are. It's actually more about one specific design flaw in how you've set up your learning system. I'm going to show you exactly what that flaw is and then walk you through 3 concrete changes how to fix it using what I call the GPS method. And this kept me learning Japanese consistently for 10 years while working full-time, not living in Japan, and being completely self-taught. And by the end, you'll know exactly how to redesign your Japanese approach to stay consistent. So, why do we keep quitting Japanese? So let me paint a picture for you, and I bet you recognize yourself in this. You decide you want to learn Japanese. You're excited. You find some video promising fluency in 6 months, and you think, perfect, I'll just follow this blueprint. And so you do. For like 2 weeks, you're crushing it, Anki reviews, anime without subtitles, maybe even kanji practice for an hour a day. But here's what happens. Life hits, your workload doubles, you move apartments, Elden Ring drops, and suddenly you're exhausted and the last thing you want to do is review 200 flashcards. And most people blame themselves at this point. They're thinking, I just don't have the discipline, or maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Most Japanese learning methods are designed for ideal conditions, like tons of time, tons of energy, completely clear schedule. So they're fragile. The moment real life enters the equation, they break. And that's not a discipline problem. That's a design problem. So the real question isn't how can I be more motivated? It's how do I build a system that can actually survive my real life? And that's where the GPS method comes in. Goal coin, pleasure machine, and smallest viable session. 3 frameworks for redesigning your approach so it doesn't fall apart when life gets hard. Let's break them down. All right, first framework, the goal coin. So everyone talks about setting goals and why it's important. That's not new. But here's what people miss. Great goals don't just tell you what to do, they also tell you what not to do. And that second part, it's actually more valuable. So here's what I mean. Imagine your goal is written on a coin. The front tells you what to do. But flip it over, the back tells you what you can ignore, or at least deprioritize. The more specific the goal, the more you can rule out. Now, here's the mistake that I see constantly with Japanese. People set goals that are way too vague. I want to learn Japanese. Okay, cool. So what does that actually mean? Because learning Japanese could mean reading novels, passing the JLPT test, or having conversations, watching anime, writing essays. There's no end to it. And when your goal is that broad, you feel like you have to do everything at once, which is overwhelming and makes it a lot more likely for you to quit when life gets busy. So here's what you do instead. Get very specific about what you actually want. Let me give you 2 examples. When I travel to Japan, I want to have casual conversations with locals about everyday topics. So the front shows you what you need. Listening, speaking, common vocabulary. But the back shows you what you can deprioritize. Learning kanji, complex grammar drills, and reading novels, for instance. Way more manageable. So now think about example number 2. I want to pass the N2 level of the Japanese language proficiency test, which is a quite high level. Completely different coin. The front tells you that you need to be able to read kanji, have a very broad set of vocabulary, strong reading, and solid listening. But the back shows you what you can ignore. Speaking. Because fun fact, the JLPT does not test speaking at all. By defining a specific goal, you're actually doing 2 things that directly help you stay consistent. Number 1, you're making the task less overwhelming. Japanese is huge. Narrowing your focus makes it more digestible, and especially when you're tired or busy. And number 2, every small bit of progress now feels meaningful. You're not just studying Japanese, you're getting closer to having that conversation in Tokyo or passing that specific test or whatever your goal is. And that emotional connection keeps you going. Just try to avoid one trap. Don't put a deadline on your goal unless you have a hard external constraint. You don't have enough data yet to know how long it'll take you to learn it. And unrealistic deadlines lead to burnout. So focus on direction, not speed. Now, having a clear goal is crucial, but it's not enough on its own. Because even with the perfect goal, you'll still quit if the actual work feels like a chore. And that's where the pleasure machine comes in. Okay, so here's where things get a bit controversial. Most people, when they're struggling with consistency, do the same thing. They go on YouTube and search for best method to learn Japanese. And I totally get it. Like, the videos promising you fluency in just a few months, secret methods, hacks that no one tells you. Why wouldn't you want the fastest and most efficient path? But here's what actually matters for staying consistent. designing your learning to be genuinely enjoyable, not finding the best method. And I think there are two big reasons why enjoyment actually matters more than efficiency. First, learning Japanese takes time. Now, I find it hard to put a label on it exactly, but according to the US Foreign Service Institute, it takes around 2,200 hours to reach professional proficiency, whatever that exactly means. And that makes Japanese a Category 5 language, which is the hardest category for English speakers to learn. So that's a marathon, not a sprint. So you can't really sustain thousands of hours of something you hate. And second, there is no universal best method anyway. Like, different people learn differently. Some like textbooks, others need immersion, some love flashcards, others would rather die. And your life circumstances matter too. Take AJAD, the all Japanese all the time method. If you have 8 hours a day to immerse in Japanese content, great. But if you're working like a 50-hour job with kids, completely unrealistic. So what works great for someone else might be completely wrong for you. So here's what to do. Take responsibility for your own learning and customize it for your preferences to make it fun rather than work. Use content you actually enjoy. If you hate anime, don't force yourself to watch it just because everyone says you should. If you love J-pop and want to dig into the lyrics as reading practice, go ahead. If you prefer structured textbooks over immersion, lean into that. Because if it's not fun, you'll quit at some point. It's that simple. Now, how do you actually make it fun? That's a pretty big topic in itself, and that's probably for another video. But I've put together a free checklist in the description with some concrete ideas that may help you out. Alright, I did not explain that well, so let me try again. What I've done is I've put together a list called 15 friction points that quietly kill your Japanese consistency. And it's basically a simple diagnostic tool that helps you identify what makes learning Japanese feel more like work instead of something you actually enjoy. It takes around 5 minutes to go through. You just check what applies to you, then you pick one thing, and you make one small adjustment to your Japanese learning approach. And by doing so, hopefully make it a bit more fun and easier to stick with. Again, it's free. I'll put the link in the description. Back to the video. So you got a clear goal, you designed your learning approach to be more enjoyable, but there's still one piece missing, and that's the thing that holds everything together when everything else around you gets crazy. And that's the smallest viable session. All right, final concept. Here's a pattern I see all the time, and I've done this myself multiple times. You get a huge burst of motivation, you study for maybe like 4 hours straight on a Saturday, and it feels amazing. But then Monday hits. You're exhausted, you skip your session, and by the weekend, you've gone a full week without even touching Japanese once. And here's the thing, when you finally sit down to restart, you've forgotten a ton, the whole thing starts to feel frustrating. So at some point, odds are you will quit. But the important thing here is, the problem isn't motivation. The problem is relying on these big lifts, these massive study sessions that only work when you have time and energy. Build your system around short, daily sessions instead. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that from my own routines. Every single day, I listen to a Japanese podcast in my car, on the way to work, on the way home. Weekends, it's on the way to the gym. Takes 0 extra time because I'm already driving and requires 0 extra willpower because it's just part of my routine. But over a week, that's 14 sessions of listening input without me even thinking about consistency. And that's what I call a smallest viable session. And it's the glue that keeps your Japanese learning from falling apart. And here's what makes it work. It has a clear limit. For me, it's duration of my commute. Could be 10 minutes or 20 flashcards for you or whatever. You can do it every single day, no matter how busy you are. And that's the key. And once it becomes a routine, it stops relying on willpower. It just becomes automatic, like brushing your teeth. Like you don't need to debate whether you feel motivated or not to brush your teeth, I hope. And for language learning specifically, this regular exposure is critical. Like your brain needs this consistent input to retain what is learned. Now you can have one of these or a few. I'd recommend probably max 2 to 3. More than that and you're back in the skipping territory when life gets busy. And the whole point is that you never skip it. It's your safety net when everything else falls apart. And important note, I'm not saying you can't do more. When you're motivated, absolutely do more. Study for hours if you want, but just always have a bare minimum to fall back on, because that's what will make you survive the bad weeks, and that's what the smallest viable sessions are for. All right, one last thing before you go. The GPS method isn't about building the perfect system. It's about building a system that can survive being imperfect. Because yes, you are going to have bad weeks and your motivation will crash and life will get in the way. And that's exactly when most people's systems fall apart, but yours won't. Now, if this was helpful, check out this video up here next or leave a like and comment. See you in the next one.